Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Matt Johnson. I've got Christopher Lochhead with me. We're sadly not joined by Colin. He is not with us today, but we're going to have some fun anyway because we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and we're celebrating the official iTunes launch of Legends and Losers. So, Chris, how's it going, man?
It's going great, Matt. It's awesome to be with you, and I think it's just so fucking funny that Colin's not here.
Yes.
Just so everybody knows, you might have seen it if you watched any of the video, but Colin spends a bunch of time up in Tahoe, and he's been there this week. And a lot of this precipitation's actually been rain.
Yeah.
And so
very disappointing.
Very disappointing. He's been sending us like videos of all the rain in Tahoe and stuff. So today it was actually snow, and my guess is he's neck deep in pow pow.
Yeah, so he's out there having a good time and completely forgot about the live broadcast or something, or he's desperately trying to get back in time and he missed it. But either way, we're gonna have some fun because we got the tools. Yeah, exactly. We got some fun stuff to talk about. First of all, let's start off with something we were talking about yesterday, which is the whole, like who is the ultimate example of like who a category king is, and that's a really interesting topic because you've got like your big four tech companies and stuff like that that get all the attention, but who's really the king? And you've got an interesting perspective on it. So let's start there.
Yeah, great. I'd actually, Matt, like to talk about two category kings today, if we could. One, a real big one, real prominent one that everybody knows, and one category king, or if you will, category queen, who as an individual, because as you know, big companies can practice category design and individuals can practice category design to kind of position themselves. But the company we wanted to highlight today certainly is Amazon. Amazon and Jeff Bezos is probably, if not the best, one of the best acting category designers today. And, if you think about it, obviously they were the category designer of what today we call e-commerce.
Okay.
And went from books to everything from there, and have been just continuing to expand what you could think of as their category potential. Obviously, dominating e-readers, created the product, created the category for what the Kindle is, and dominate that market. Okay. And then the one that, and then they failed, interestingly, in smartphones, right?
Yeah.
And now they're in a battle with Netflix on the movie side. But the one where they're really killing it, and it's one that some people aren't aware of, is they're actually some people would argue the most important company in enterprise technology today.
Yeah, and that's what we want to dive into a little bit, because that's, for those of us that are from the outside looking in on the tech company, if you're not actively involved in building a startup company, building an app or anything like that, this probably goes completely unaware. Now, a couple of our podcasts are hosted on Amazon Web Services, just on their S3 servers. That's me dipping my toe into the water of that world, and I had no idea all this is going on behind the scenes. So what is AWS, and why should anybody care?
So to tell you the story, let me tell you a story before I tell you the story. Okay. It's Friday afternoon. We got a Jack and Coke going, and so I'll tell you a story. Is there anything in there, Matt?
Sadly, no. There's no vodka in there. I gotta hang on. I'll run to the cabinet real quick. I know.
What fucking show do you think you're producing over here?
I know. I should have grabbed my scotch.
Exactly. In the name of everything holy. So, in the book Play Bigger, we talk about how entrepreneurs have these aha moments where they get an insight, right?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this one, and then I'll get to the Amazon one. So this past Thanksgiving, I was doing some research into how some of the categories that emerged as a result of the holiday. And I discovered something that was really fascinating. There's a company called Swanson, and they are a supplier of turkeys. And back in the day, they were trying to meet demand for Thanksgiving. And so they would make sure that they had more than enough turkeys because they didn't want to lose any sales. And so they had a hard time forecasting demand. And so they had to, if you will, oversupply themselves with turkeys. And that meant that after Thanksgiving, there was all this turkey meat and they didn't want it to go to waste. And so they thought, well, what could we do? And then they had this aha. And that's what ultimately led to the new category of the TV dinner and what we now know as the Swanson TV dinner.
Okay.
Now, what the fuck does that have to do with Amazon?
Yeah, so it will all make sense in a second. Yeah.
It's all going to just pour yourself a Jack and Coke and chill your nuts and it'll all just be fine. So here's an interesting thing. In the old days of technology, if you were a big provider, and particularly if you sold anything and you were a transaction-oriented business, if you were a bank or anything like that, you had to build your internal data center up to the highest level of what in the tech industry we call availability possible. And one of my favorite examples of that was when I was back at Mercury, one of our clients that I always found fun was a company called 800 Flowers. Mm-hmm. And you go to 800 Flowers and get your mom flowers for Mother's Day and your wife and all that. And so if you're 800 Flowers before the cloud and before Amazon, what you had to do was you had to build your own infrastructure so that on February 12th and 13th, you could take orders for flowers. Yeah. And because if you blew up on those days, it was going to be really, really bad, right? And so the reality is for 800 Flowers and literally the vast majority of companies on the planet, big and small, they would have to buy and install and manage a level of computing power at the sort of maximum that they would need it, because otherwise their business would blow up, right? Yeah. And so what that meant is a lot of servers and a lot of hard drives and a lot of storage and databases and stuff like Mercury sold, BTO software, and. Well, so along comes Amazon. Now, to circle back to the Swanson story, about 10 years ago, they have this aha. They're like everybody else. They've built this massive data center because their business is e-commerce. And they got to build it to perform, around the American holidays and, when transactions really blow up. But they realize that most of the compute power they have, they don't need most of the time, right? Because they've built it for the kind of optimum requirement. So they go, what if we just like rented some of our excess compute power when we don't need it and see if anybody would buy it? Okay. So that business, that started about 10 years ago. And that business today, there's a story that came out. I want to get the date right. It was February 06. So just a few days ago on ZDNet, quote, AWS dominates cloud computing infrastructure market bigger than IBM, Google, and Microsoft combined.
It's insane.
Our dear friend Bob Evans and a upcoming guest on Legends and Losers. You got to watch for the Bob Evans show. He's a incredible pundit and industry leader in the tech industry, a writer and thought leader. And he recently published his top 10, what he called top 10 cloud wars, and named Amazon the #1 company in the cloud.
Goodness. Okay.
And just so you have the numbers, this is about a 10-year-old business. It's at about a $14 billion run rate today, and it's growing at about 50%. And so the reason I think Amazon is at a big scale, a great example of a category king is they start off in one category selling online books. They expand the category potential to be ultimately what it is today, which is virtually all e-commerce. Yeah. And then they keep expanding. Kindle is a whole new category opportunity. And the interesting thing about AWS, of course, Matt, is that it's not in the consumer space. Right. It's not in the DNA of the company. The whole company is a B2C company, business to consumer, right? Yeah. And yet they figure this thing out. And now there are people like the legendary Bob Evans, who you'll see on a very soon up and coming episode of Legends and Losers, claiming that they're the #1 company in the cloud, and there's others that are claiming that if they're not today, they certainly will be soon, the #1 enterprise technology company. Meanwhile, they continue to kick Walmart and Target's ass. As a matter of fact, I went to Target yesterday. When was the last time, Matt, you went to a Target?
Thankfully, it's been a while.
Yeah, well, I went to one yesterday, Wednesday, in Santa Cruz, California. And guess what the experience on a Wednesday afternoon, you just pick up a few things, toilet paper and basic bullshit. Guess what that experience is like?
I'm guessing it was not the most fun you've ever had.
Fuck, what are these people thinking? It's like their ass is getting kicked by Amazon. And so because their differentiation is physical locations, you'd think they'd make the physical location experience just completely amazing, right?
No, the margins aren't there for that.
It's Wednesday fucking afternoon. There's nobody there to check the shit out.
Right.
right? There's a fucking line. There's a line on Wednesday. And then they have that self-checkout bullshit.
Right.
And the self-checkout technology is so terrible. They have to have a dude standing there, and I think they have 3 kiosks. So maybe this is more effective. You got 1 dude and 3 kiosks as opposed to 1 dude, 1 line or whatever. But like, fuck. It was very, very, very hard, Target, to buy some shit from you. And you're like standing there with this giant, 12-foot bag of toilet paper. And you think, you know what? I'm just going to have the U.S. Postal Service deliver that from Amazon for me. Fuck you, Target, right?
Yeah.
And I literally walked out of there and I said to my wife, Carrie, I said, baby, we need to short Target stock and buy more Amazon stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the interesting thing, Matt, is the compounding power of the category king. You had one of the most powerful companies in tech, Cisco, who was trying to compete with Amazon AWS as recently as I think last November, maybe December, but in that time frame. They announced that they had invested $1 billion in their business unit to compete against Amazon. Mm-hmm. And they announced in November, December last year that they were shutting the business and they were going to transfer their customers to competitors.
Right.
And now you have ZDNet saying they're bigger than Microsoft, Google, and IBM combined. And so, as we talk about in the book, there's this compounding power of category kings. The research that we did says that category kings in the tech business get 76% of the market cap. Mm-hmm. That is to say, total value created in their space. Mm-hmm. And so there's just we're living in this winner take all world is the bottom line. And the thing that I find amazing, you and I talked about this yesterday, is how many people in business don't seem to understand that the dynamics changed.
Yeah, and that's probably the most interesting part of the conversation there is that I think we're seeing something that has always existed in some form. I mean, there's a reason why we have Protos Principle. I mean, he came up with that a long time ago because it's always existed. But I think the accelerating rate of technology makes it much more apparent in spaces like enterprise technology where you can just see it. And you can see the market cap, and you can see it's a lot easier. It's more visible for us to see that they capture the market share. But it's this way in consulting, it's this way in coaching, it's this way in other forms of entrepreneurship, where the market leader gets the lion's share of the riches, the benefits, the credibility, the profit margins, the everything. It's just people don't think about it in those terms, and they refuse to apply it to themselves.
Yeah, it's fascinating that's what's going on. There was let me get the data so that I've got it right. Yeah, so McKinsey, the consulting firm you mentioned, consulting, came out with a report that was in the Economist last September. And what the McKinsey Global Institute says is 10% of the world's public companies generate 80% of the profits. Mm-hmm. And even more stunning, particularly for small businesses or entrepreneurial businesses, is that according to McKinsey, companies with $1 billion or more in revenue account for nearly 60% of global revenue and 65% of global market cap. That is value creation. Mm-hmm. And so, whether it's on the individual level or whether it's on the corporate level, what we see happening is more and more going to a small number at the top.
Yeah.
What does that make you think about business? I mean, you're an entrepreneur yourself.
Well, to me, it means that you have to find the sweet spot between the category that is small enough and unique enough that you can dominate it and be the only logical choice. But then that market that you decide to dominate, it's great to be a category of one if you're the only provider. It's not so great to be a category of one when you're also your only client. No one gives a shit. No one gives yes, exactly. No one gives a shit what your client potential is. Yeah, so it's finding that sweet spot. It's the middle part of that Venn diagram between what you're really good at and what your superpower gives you the ability to be the best in the world at X. And then there's a nice demand and from people that actually have the money to pay you what you deserve to supply X to the world. And I think that's where most people struggle, at least on a personal level, because we don't have a venture capitalist or someone that we're going to where we have to pitch and explain the market that we're going after and why we are best suited to sell to that market. If you're starting a company, you got to figure that stuff out, because that's the first questions you're going to ask, you're going to get asked in a pitch meeting. If you go out there and start a coaching, consulting, or a sales company, or whatever the case is, most people don't ask you that question. They don't ask you the tough questions.
Yeah, that's right. And interestingly enough, on a upcoming episode of Legends and Losers, we are lucky enough to interview the legendary top 20 venture capitalists in the world, according to Forbes, Mike Maples, the co-founder of Floodgate Capital. Mm-hmm. And Mike and I have been talking about this for a while. He brings it up on the show. He has an incredible point of view. If you take a big step back and think about the economy, the kind of context the economy happens in is essentially a fight for resources. There's only a certain number of strawberries. There's demand for the strawberries, and there's kind of who can meet the supply and who can meet the demand, right? And so there's this notion of scarcity, mm-hmm. and then essentially competition to capture scarcity.
Yeah.
Well, Mike's perspective, Matt, is that that's now wrong. That information technology, and because of the fact that technology is being embedded in everything, is creating a paradigm where the economy is actually creating abundance.
Right.
And the game is about how can I create new categories that spawn abundance, and then as abundance explodes, so to speak, how do I capture, my fair share or more than my fair share, as the case may be.
Yes, exactly.
But it's a 180 in terms of perspective, right? And mm-hmm. If you think about your business and this podcast and so forth, we now have an opportunity to create, something that scales and is ubiquitous and can create a lot of value and hopefully make a big difference. And before, if you wanted to do that, you needed to own a fucking TV station.
Yeah, you had to have millions of dollars in infrastructure. Yeah. Well, but there's something interesting in there that you said, which is your fair share, right? So that's an interesting concept, because if you once you come to the realization, or at least the acknowledgement of yourself, that somebody is going to dominate this category, whatever that is.
Yes.
Right? Then it's not an issue of what's fair and what's not fair. Like, that's going to happen anyway, because human nature is human nature, right? So category kings are category kings because we as human beings cannot hold 3, 5, or 17 different vendors under the category of, they send me my toilet paper through the mail. Like, that's Amazon. Once they occupy that space in your brain, you don't have space for 5 other things to do the same thing. So it's all rooted in human nature. So it's funny you mentioned fair, because somebody is going to take that market share. You have to decide, is that going to be me? Am I going to try to be that person, or am I going to fight for the scraps?
It's funny that you mentioned that, Matt. Back in the ancient days when I was at a company called Scient in the .com boom, we had a lot of slogans that we used that were just kind of fun to get everybody going. And one of them was, somebody's got to win. It might as well be you.
Yes, that is exactly what I had in mind.
And you can look at it from a social perspective and say, this really fucking sucks. The fact that, so much goes to so few. And there's no question about that.
Yeah.
To me, and it was a huge motivation for wanting to start Legends and Losers, the issue isn't so much sit back and take a social perspective and say, well, fuck, that sucks. And I think from a social perspective, it does suck. From a business perspective, I look at it and go, all right, if that's how the game works, then let's fucking go crush it in the game. Right? And so how do you become the category king in your domain, right? And I mentioned earlier, so I want to share an example, Matt, of someone who's done that on an individual basis.
Okay.
And that's Dushka Zapata.
Okay.
And Dushka is our guest on show 1 of Legends and Losers. And here's this woman.
And for those of you that don't know what that means, Chris and Colin did an episode 0 because they can't do anything normally. So there's an episode 0 of just the two of them, and then Dushka's episode 1.
So what goes? So
so funny.
Matt's maybe we should have done a more proper introduction, but Matt's our producer. He produces Legends and Losers, and we fucking love him. If it weren't for him, we'd just be two assholes just talking to each other in a garage, which we were for a very long time, by the way. And so we're going to get to douche guy, I promise. But so I just got to ask you, like, what's it like for you when you get on the phone with us and you're working with us?
Oh my God. Well, yeah. So for me, it's like seeing, like what other people must look like and think to themselves when they come across my real estate podcast with my co-host, because we're like the chemistry that you and Colin have and your guys' sense of humor and the banter and stuff like that is very similar to what I have on my own show. And it's funny seeing that from the outside looking in, I guess. It's fun, and it's fun to see like that develop because I know where it goes, and it's going to be a fun ride for you guys.
So do you sort of feel like you're watching yourself and your partner?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit.
Except you guys are better. You guys are better than we were when we started.
Well, maybe when you started, not now. I know that. And hey, while we're on it, what the fuck? Why don't we properly introduce you, Matt? So. And who knows, if there's a lot of snow or, supermodels or zebras, Colin might get busy and you might need to come on Legends as a co-host on a regular basis.
If Colin regularly ditches out on your own show.
Yeah, you fucker bastard.
Well, first of all, let me thank all the people that are watching us live. So Linda and Lorraine and Matt Aitchison, by the way. What is up, man? Matty A, Ben and Brian.
We love Matty A. Huge shout out to Matty A. Matt. This would not be happening. Well,
yeah, literally.
It would not be happening without Matt. So either thank you, and if you hate Legends and Losers, then, he's the guy to send the nasty grams to.
Yeah, so if anybody's watching, go check out Matty A's podcast, Millionaire Mindcast. So that is, and Matty A is who hooked us up with me and Chris and Colin, all that good stuff. But
Millionaire Mindcast, Matty A. I was on the show. We're going to have, actually, Matty's going to come down to Santa Cruz, Matt.
Is he going to be on the show like live, like in person?
Well, do you think we should do that?
Yes, of course you should.
Well, he's going to be on the show, but do you think it should be live like this? I mean, we could get ourselves into trouble. It might be after a few libations. But what if we did like a Legends and Losers live at 1:30 in the morning? California. I'm like, well, we've been going at it all day, and then this happened.
That's right. Well, yeah, get a lot of viewers in South Africa and the UK, and people watching first thing in the morning. Why not? They deserve a little light in their life.
Is there anyone else who's watching us live that we want to do a quick little shout out to?
Let's see who else is with us. Lee, Corey, Caitlin, Jesse. Nobody that I recognize as far as like other podcast hosts and names like that. So.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
But thank you all. But let's tell a little bit more of your story. So your background is actually you didn't start off your professional career as a legendary podcast producer, did you?
No, I came from background in real estate and sales and marketing, and then ended up working for a company that works with a lot of the top real estate agents across the country doing video and email marketing. That got me into hosting webinars with some of the top like coaches and consultants in that world from across the country. That led to starting my podcast. Then the podcast led to.
And what's your podcast called and what's it about, man? Let's get a little plug in for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It is called Real Estate Uncensored, and it is a sales and marketing training podcast for agents.
Isn't that awesome? So you're this digital growth hacker, and yet you got one foot in the kind of digital podcasting, growth hacking world, and you got this other big foot in the real estate world. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, so I'm a partner in a company called Elite Real Estate Systems, which is based in Nebraska. My business partner on that side is Jeff Cohn, who's built the #1 team in the state there. And so we've opened that up for expansion so that any agent across the country over the coming, months and years can effectively join that flagship team from wherever they're at in the country. They get access to all the same training, all the same coaching, accountability, support that the agents there in the office in Omaha get. So I'm helping Jeff to build that out. And then my podcast co-host and I are partnering up with another guy in the industry to come up with the world's most badass training and success platform for real estate agents. So that will be coming a little bit later this year.
And so you've got this real estate training and development business. Mm-hmm. And how do you end up in the podcast producing business?
It is the Swanson story. That is 100. Yeah, that is 100% what it is.
It's the Swanson. It's the TV dinner AWS cloud story.
Yes. It is exactly what it is. It's somebody else coming to me and saying, like, hey, what the hell are you doing? What, like, the systems that you're running that are running behind the scenes of the show, can you sell that
for your own podcast?
For my own podcast.
They respected what you were doing, right?
Yeah. So they look from the outside looking in. They're going, hey, I would like to have that same thing for myself. So then it went from, what are you doing? Can you show me what you're doing? To, okay, that's way too much. Can you just do it for me? And then as I created all the systems and hired the staff to run my own podcast, I then used that and sell their excess time and the systems that I built up to other entrepreneurs.
And how great as a smaller entrepreneur, you're in this one field. You're learning about what today we call growth hacking and all the good shit about how to build digital businesses in the real estate industry. And then that turns into a whole other company that you create to produce podcasts. And you're right. It is exactly the Swanson dinner. It is exactly Amazon Web Services. Yeah. And, the interesting thing is that sort of paying attention to what are the, in one of our upcoming shows, we have the legendary Ann Mirko, who's the co-founder of Floodgate, Mike Maples' partner. Mm-hmm. And in our book, we shamelessly rip off some of her intellectual capital. Her and Mike sort of have this point of view that says that entrepreneurs, they have an aha, and that aha is centered around an insight. Okay. And that insight is either a technical insight, like some awesome new carbonidingulation thing that you can do that may or may not have an applicability, but it's a cool technical thing to go do.
Right.
Companies like VMware, that's how they get started. And then there's a market insight, which is how a company like Airbnb gets started, which is like, I don't have a lot of money. Can I just rent somebody's fucking couch?
Yeah, like the idea comes first. That the technology is just strictly to fill the need, to fill the idea.
It comes later. But I got to take my metaphorical hat off to you, because you're a great example of, okay, so you're not Amazon. Mm-hmm. You're a smaller entrepreneur, but you're in one field of training and development in the real estate industry, and all you're leveraging your background in the digital and marketing world. And yet you see this opportunity with podcasting because it's working for you, that are the cops coming to get you?
Yeah, that's my time is up.
That's it.
That's it for me. That's right.
When they interview somebody, he was such a nice boy. I don't know why he was a serial killer. I couldn't believe that he had 17 people cut up in vats. He was so sweet. Oh my God.
That's right. Have you ever seen Dexter? It's not the abnormal ones that, it's not the creepy looking dudes that get away with it.
And so, when did you discover you were a category designer, Matt?
When I read this book.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say that, because one of the things, certainly I don't want to speak for my co-authors. I think, they felt the same way, but I'll speak for myself, that with that book was we wanted to take the intuitive things that, whether it was Jeff Bezos in his world or Matt Johnson in your world, sort of do intuitively, which is you're sort of looking for, where are those openings, where are those ahas, and then can I see a problem that nobody else sees in quite the same way, and then deliver a solution against that problem to create a new category or to access a new category, right? And so, you're a pioneer, you're a category designer in two areas, in real estate training and development, and now in podcast production.
Well, and here's the tough part, I feel like, about category design, which is, so you can have a market insight or a technology insight, but you still have to be able to pair up the right insight with your superpower, right? Because you can have all the insights in the world. If it doesn't match up with your superpower, you're going to poorly execute on whatever that insight is, and you're not going to be the one that ends up being the category king.
So say more about, this term superpower you're using. What does that exactly mean, and where's your head at on that?
So that would that comes from my co-host. So he does a coaching call almost every night with an agent around the country, and one of the things he takes them through is the process of finding what is that thing that is unique about you that you are better at or different from almost everyone else on. What can you do?
I would
at a
highly
world-class
advise to
level?
focus on the different part, not the better part.
Yes. But it's nice when you can find that. If you can find something that you're genuinely better at, although that is, it's not always sustainable. Yeah, you're right. Especially like in the technology world, somebody will catch up. But yeah, what is it that you can do either at a world-class level or that you are so unique at that is extremely hard for other people to reproduce? So it took me a while to figure out what that is for me, but I found out what it is, which is running and executing a high volume, low cost professional service in a way that delivers super consistent service, right? So I figured out kind of it's not super high custom, super high ticket. It's the opposite. So I found out what that is for me, and I apply it to the podcast business. That's how I run that, and it's how I run what this training platform will eventually be, because it's not actually just a membership website with content. It is a professional service masquerading as a membership site. So I figured out a way. I basically took both concepts and both market insights, but I applied it to my superpower.
So just so awesome. And, it's interesting. I was just telling an entrepreneur about one of the things I really respect about you, which is you may remember, and I won't give the specifics because it's not appropriate or necessary, but, I had what I thought might be an opportunity for you not that long ago. And it was a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur who didn't necessarily want to get into podcasting completely, but wanted to be able to leverage some of your kind of brain power on marketing that you've learned from all of this stuff. And I remember bringing that up to you, and you were like, well, we're working on a service that might work for your friend, but we don't really have it right now. And so, and the net of it was you were not going to kind of pervert where you were going with the offerings that you were creating to do a custom one-off.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing I found about that, and this has been something I've been thinking about a lot, and I want to ask you about it, is I've had conversations with entrepreneurs who are beginning to do category design around the individual who is their sort of market target kind of person. In the tech space, we call it the persona, right?
Yeah.
And so whether it's focusing on persona or focusing very tightly on your niche, you've been very disciplined in this is who I'm going after, and this is the problem, and this is the solution. And in the case of the lead I wanted to give you, this friend of mine, he didn't have quite the problem that you solve, and you were very rigorous about saying, kind of not for us.
Yeah.
How did you figure that out?
The hard way. That's with everything. So here's the deal with that. I think you find out, and especially running the kind of service that I do, where it is high volume, low margin, and you're not doing a lot of customization, you find out the hard way that you cannot do too much custom one-off stuff because there's too much opportunity for error, and you don't have the margins to correct for that. You don't have the margins to allow for the constant correction of errors and things like that. And it just comes along with the business model. But effectively what it does is it puts the pressure back on me as the entrepreneur to way more closely watch the process and the system than I should have to. So it pulls me out of selling. It pulls me out of growing the firm to step back into operations and constantly have to monitor that. And I don't want that. I want to be able to focus on scaling up the company. And so I can't have one foot always dragging behind me in the operations side. So it was that aha of going, I'm not so much interested in just doing the things, like Dan Kennedy said, like your entrepreneurial life starts when you make the decision to go from being the doer of the thing to being the marketer of the thing, right? And that's the decision that I had to come to.
It's so fascinating. It's such a big insight, very early on. And I was just talking to some of my friends at a website called 800 CEO Read. And for those of you who don't know them, they're a wonderful company who focuses on business books. Mm-hmm. And so they've asked me to write a blog about kind of writing a business book. But the wonderful thing about what you're saying is, how are you going to go out and learn these things? How do you go out and figure out that this is going to be, that maniacal focus on a very tight niche is going to be what I'm going to do? Is there anything that you've read? Because you joke about learning by failing, and the reason I bring up this thing that I'm going to go write for the 800 CEO Read folks is in my response to them, I said, well, when I started a company at 18 with nothing, I really only had three ways to learn, right? Doing, get mentors and coaches, and then reading. So I'm curious, is there anything, Matt, that you've read over the years that helped you figure out this kind of maniacal focus where you don't get distracted?
Yes and no. I would say that probably the biggest portion came from mentors, which would be Frank Klesitz at Viral Marketing, who is one of the sharpest guys I've ever met and has built what is effectively the most well-run digital agency that I or anyone else has ever encountered. And I'm talking about people where when they have an interaction with him and his company, they come away from that saying, holy cow, I run a digital agency and I learned more about running my own agency from dealing with them as a client than from coaches and education and stuff like that. So that's a big part of it, is watching that company grow from 1 to 3 million since I've known him, and just having kind of an unofficial business mentor there. That relationship helped a great deal. The other things as far as reading would be Dan Kennedy stuff and Jay Abraham stuff on the marketing side. And then there's an amazing book called Managing the Professional Services Firm by David Maister, who is a legal consultant. And that is the most amazing book for just the flat out day-to-day, how do you actually manage a company where there's human beings delivering actual service to other human beings that can actually scale and sustain itself.
So if I heard you right, I think there was 3, maybe 4 that you mentioned there. So let's get them nice and tight. What are they?
Yeah. So it was Mentors, the Frank Klesitz from Viral Marketing, Dan Kennedy's books, Jay Abraham's book, and David Maister.
Yeah, I've read some of Jay's books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so why did those books make such a difference for you?
Oh man. There's that line from Jay's book, don't fall in love with the service, you fall in love with the customers. And that probably made one of the biggest impacts. Just the whole concept of the strategy of preeminence, of taking them on, and they are someone that is under your care, that you truly take them on as clients and you care deeply about their results. And then that kind of gets you out of the mode of, well, what's better for me? It kind of gets you out of the mode of taking the quick money, which is to custom one-off everything for everybody so that you can take on anybody that comes to you with an interest. And you realize that's not what's best for them.
It's so funny that you say that, Matt, because those are words a lot of people can say. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, it's bullshit. Mm-hmm. And having been through it with you, it's true. Because we literally put our lives in your hands. Anybody who knows me at all knows that my technical abilities, is to say severely limited.
Leaves something to be desired.
Yeah, Matt, God bless him. As we were sort of getting down to the kickoff time here, he's like, on my phone going, okay, you got to make sure, and I got to log in, I got to do this thing, and I got to enter this fucking number, and like he's treating me like the 3-year-old that I am. But it's interesting. Literally from our first email interaction with you, it has been like you have been us from the exact moment. And it's interesting because we had 2 other folks in your world, right? Other podcast production companies that we got introduced to from various other sources. And we just immediately locked in and, told those other sources, and who, probably are very good providers in this area. But that personal connection, and most importantly, the fact that you treated us like Legends and Losers was your show from the first email. We hadn't even named the fucking show.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, and that goes back to really figuring out what your category is. So I've gotten more clear on that as I've gone along. But my real passion is for the coaching, consulting, speaking business, and that's you, Chris. Colin's getting into that world more and more. That's where all of my favorite clients are, because I want to help people. Like, I want to build a scalable, sustainable business, yes, but I also want to build a business that actually impacts people and brings a message to them that can change their lives. So I get a very deep satisfaction out of helping those types of clients do that. But I also we're all on that same journey. Like, I'm, because this is a byproduct of my own podcast, and I'm getting into speaking, and I'll eventually write books and stuff like that. So I can
about how that works.
Yeah, believe me, I'll be picking your brain. But Oh man.
But the
But we're all on
cool
that
thing
journey.
about this, Matt, is a huge part of our mission on Legends and Losers is to try to spark a breakthrough in entrepreneurship around the
Yeah.
world and here in America. The fact that there's a quote unquote crisis in American entrepreneurship just keeps me awake at night.
Yeah.
And so one of the very coolest things about doing this with you is you're exactly the kind of entrepreneur that, from the bottom of my heart, I want to see be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, which is awesome. And that's what's great about this relationship, and it's what is great about the show that you guys are putting out there is if you can pull off your mission, that will be so fulfilling for you, and it'll be so fulfilling for me to watch that happen for you guys. To see other people, because I get a sense of, and I don't get it as much as my co-host does, because people reach out to him a little bit more. So he has to actually like say, hey, I just got this testimonial, and forward stuff to me, right? Because he's on the front lines a little bit more, to where people reach out and say, hey, I've been listening to your podcast for 2 months. I went out and I implemented the things that you guys said, and I picked up 2 new clients. And it's changed my life. I don't have to go get a job. Or I was on the verge of quitting, and I got a hold of your show, and now I'm doing well. I just became a top agent in my office in less than 3 months. Like that's the kind of feedback that we get. And so I know the power of a podcast has to get that kind of reaction and interaction from people. And I'm excited for that to happen to you guys, because I know how fulfilling it is,
Yeah, and it's really the motivation. The motivation is make a difference, have a good time.
Yeah.
And there's a level of tenacity that we're willing to bring to it. A great buddy of mine, Ben Ruiz, shout out to Ben Ruiz, is married to this spectacular woman named Melanie Gideon. And Melanie is a New York Times bestselling novelist. And she writes, she'll probably kick me in the nuts for this, but she writes what I would call chick lit. And, yeah, and I don't mean this, I wouldn't read it because it's just not what I read, but
you're not the audience. Yeah.
I am not the audience. But Melanie is an extraordinarily successful, incredibly well reviewed. I mean, it's just sold a crazy amount, and she's had I don't want to say anything I'm not allowed to, but books optioned for movies from very serious ding dong superstars. Anyway, I remember having dinner with her years ago, and if you think about being a New York Times best-selling novelist, and you think about how many people have that dream, that's a dream a lot of people probably have, right?
Yeah.
And so I said to her, I said, hey, Melanie, how did you do that? And you know what she said to me? I just kept writing.
Yeah.
And she said, virtually everybody I started with stopped writing, and I just kept fucking writing.
Yeah.
And so there's a legendary tenacity about making it happen. And I think that's another thing that, we want to spark is Phyllis Diller famously said, yeah, I was an overnight sensation. It just took 15 years. In the 140 character Twitter world that we live in, there are people who think that you can get success overnight. And, you got to bang at it. And, what I love about the example that you are certainly compared to my ass, a fairly young guy. And you've got now multiple successful entrepreneurial businesses going.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Now, I want to shift gears a little bit. I got to share one of my favorite stories. So we launched Legends and Losers yesterday. And so I got to just share this story.
Okay.
I'm going to out you. And the reason
is this a bird story? Are we moving into are we talking about T-Rex now?
No, we're going to get to that in a second. I have some new facts on that, but I'm going to out my friends, Matt and Jamie, and they're going to kill me. But Jamie, you kind of outed yourself on Facebook. So, I'm going to tell the story. So I get a text from my buddy, Matt Lyles yesterday, and he says, quote, Jamie, his wife, unbelievable woman, Jamie and I are playing a drinking game during the podcasts. We have to drink every time you drop the F-bomb. I'm already hammered. So I'm not sure how far Matt and Jamie were. And then Jamie, I think it's on Facebook, said something about how she had to send them out for more beer. And so I just want to warn anybody who, if you want to be a regular listener to Legends and Losers, a drinking game called you have to have a shot every time one of us says fuck is a
Yes, we recommend / caution it. Yes, so just make sure it's towards the end of the night and you don't have anywhere to drive.
Yes. Now I do. One of the questions we've now taken to asking our guests is tell us something legendary. So I have something legendary for you. So in no particular order. Do you know how many drones were used during the Lady Gaga opening when she was on the top of the stadium?
No. Okay.
So there was 300. But here's the interesting thing. They were not fucking up there at the time. The FAA, the Federal, Aviation Administration, wouldn't allow them to fly the fucking drones over the stadium at the fucking Super Bowl.
Okay.
So they had to shoot it some other time and impose it behind her.
What?
I'm telling you, Google it. That's how I fucking found it. Okay, so that's legendary, something legendary you didn't know. Okay. Here's another one. How many breweries do you think there are in the United States?
Oh, God. 3 million.
Oh, that would be fucking awesome.
I take it it's not that many. All right.
No, there's 300 million people in the United States, so 3 million breweries would be great.
Yeah, apparently one for every 100 people, right?
Yeah, exactly. That seems like the right ratio for guys like you and I. I think so.
Yeah. I think that's a good ratio. Yeah.
Apparently, we need to get busy because there's only 5,000 breweries in America.
Whoa, are you serious?
Yeah, and they make 165 million barrels a year, which clearly is not enough.
That's only a half a barrel per person. That's clearly not enough.
Yeah. Now, look, we'd be remiss if we did not talk about chickens.
Well, yes, apparently so.
No, but that's the last time we're going to use that word because that word is normally ascribed to food. And where I live, they are my daughters. I'm a huge participant.
17 or 19 or 23 of these things?
No, 7. But
7,
we used to have 4.
Okay.
We got 3 more, and the jump from 4 to 7 is a big fucking jump.
Okay. Because
very hard to feed 7 dinosaurs or hens, which is the appropriate language.
Okay.
It's hard to feed 7 dinosaurs blueberries at the same time.
Okay.
Now, but here's the thing you don't know. First of all, you guys have to tune in to the Bob Evans. I mentioned we're going to have Bob Evans on an upcoming show. Bob Evans is the first show that one of the dinosaurs appears on the show. So my daughter Abigail is on the show, and before we started shooting with Bob. And so what you need to know about Abigail is, so if you've ever had a dog or a cat that just always wanted to be with you and wanted you to hold them,
right?
That's Abigail.
Except she's a hen. Yeah.
She's a hen. Yeah. And so, and the big aha I've had, I didn't want these fucking things. I thought they were stupid and stinky and whatever, and food for that matter. And my wife wanted them, and we're now, I think 4 years in now, and I'm just over the top about them, and they run the household and shit. And so, they're as smart as a dog or a cat. But the big thing I want to share with everybody is, did you realize that they are the direct descendant of a Tyrannosaurus Rex?
Did not know that. What do you mean direct descendant?
Well, so scientists over time, ever since we mapped the human genome in 98 or 97 or 99, or the late 90s were a blur for me because I was flying all around the world and doing a bunch of stuff. But right around there, we mapped the human genome. We as a human beings, we mapped the genome. Anyway, we've now been comparing the human genome to animals and trying to figure out how close we are to all sorts of things, and then comparing animals to animals and all this shit. And so the net of it is, scientists have figured out that the modern day hen or rooster is to the T-Rex what we all are to Neanderthal woman or man.
Okay.
And so just like we're direct biological and now proven through DNA science, descendants of Neanderthal woman and man. The modern day chicken, everybody says, oh, the dinosaurs died. And the reasons, I love this analogy in business. The reasons the dinosaurs died was failure to adapt to a changing environment. And we all have to adapt or we're going to die. Rah, rah, rah. Well,
okay.
Guess what, fuckers? The dinosaur did adapt to a changing environment, and they turned into the modern day hen and rooster, which is why we call them dinosaurs. And I know I'm going to sound even more insane than I already sound at, but they're fucking awesome. And you will get to meet Abigail and probably others. And I got to tell you, if you watch the Bob Evans episode of Legends and Losers, it'll come out soon, before the show. So Abigail loves to just hang out.
Okay.
Like 6
Which
hours.
I find hilarious. Yes. And
So,
yeah, she'll just sit there.
So, well, let me ask you, what was it like the first time we were on a Zoom call and there was Abigail?
Well, I knew about it going in, so it was a little bit different. Although the Bob Evans, for people that don't know, like when you obviously go to YouTube or iTunes and subscribe to the show, but go watch the video version on YouTube, because what is it, 1/3 of the way through before he actually notices, which I find hilarious.
Approximately. I'm sort of holding her right here, and before the show, I had said to Colin, "Hey, do you think we should tell Bob?" And I've known Bob for fucking more years than I want to admit. Think we should say anything to Bob about Abby? And he says, no, let Bob figure out Abby. And the funny thing, and if you watch closely on the video of the show, what you'll realize is we're pretty sure Bob was on an iPad and he's like fucking around with sort of the angle of the dangle,
Yeah.
And so at the beginning of the show, we're talking to him and he's talking to us, but he's also fucking around with whatever, I think it's an iPad, but whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so he's not really paying attention to the video of Colin and I, right?
Right.
And then at some point in the show, do you remember what he says?
Yeah, I said something like, "Is that a what did he call it? Is that a marmot?"
Yeah, is that a marmot or what the fuck do you have?
Yeah, because she's just sitting there like in your hand for 20 minutes, almost motionless, like no clucking, no noise, no movement, just super chill, which is the strangest thing.
Well, and I'm like this crazy Dr. Evil fuck with this fucking, I'm going to call her by her proper name, dinosaur in my arms. So yes, and I found out something today in preparation for today. I found out that you'll love this, man. There is a medical diagnosis for people that have a fear of, and I'm going to call them by their proper name, dinosaurs.
Okay.
And it's called electrophobia. I think I'm saying that's right. ALEKTOROPHOBIA. You do that when you're fucking dyslexic. Electrophobia is the official name for the fear of, I'll call them little dinosaurs.
I'll have to keep that in mind. Hopefully I don't suffer from that.
No, and when you come to visit, you'll see how wonderful they are. They're great with children. Oh, and I'll tell you this other thing, and I found this out today, but it's not surprising. Little dinosaurs have a great memory, and they can distinguish between over 100 different faces of people or animals. And I swear to God, I've seen our girls. They recognize people who they don't see on a regular basis. When my wife Carrie and I go out of town, Carrie's incredibly protective of them. Folks, this is what happens when two fucking people who don't have children get dinosaurs. They lose their minds, right? And so my mom Jackie is one of the few people that my wife Carrie trusts with the dinosaurs. Yeah. So if we want to go on vacation to Hawaii or I don't know where, what we normally do is Jackie flies out from Canada. We fly her in from Toronto, and we spend several days, a week, whatever it is, and then we fly the fuck off to wherever it is we're going. And then we fly the fuck back, and then we hang out for, another several days or a week or whatever it is, So we get Jackie on the front end and the back end. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that we need, and Jackie has a new nickname.
Okay.
See, my sister has 3 triplet girls who I I think they're 12 now. Yeah, triplet girls. Wrap your head around that.
Ooh, man, that's a big news drop at 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
Oh fuck, she breastfed them.
Oh, Lord in heaven.
Lordy, I mean, yeah, Carolyn, my sister Carolyn. Shout out to Carolyn. We love you. Be legendary. I think she's probably going to win the prize as the most legendary mother ever. But yeah,
man alive.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be tested actually, as those become teenagers. But anyway, so your sister had 3 girls.
I'd hate to be her husband, Martin. Oh, imagine 16 years old, 17, 18, 19. Holy shit. Anyway, and so the girls call my mother Jackie Nana.
Okay.
And so my wife Carrie got her a T-shirt that says Nana Hen on it.
Nice. That's awesome.
She comes and takes care of the girls. This has clearly got to be the end of the show.
I think so, yes. Although my assistant's watching, she says, Chris, you should look into turkeys. Turkeys are cuddly buggers, apparently. So there you go.
Wow, turkeys.
Maybe you need to step up. I mean, there's more to cuddle.
Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of cross.
Expand the horizons. I mean, there's a lot of bird species you can get into here.
A lot of cross species cuddling to be done. I saw. I don't know how the fuck I'd be able to dig it up. I think it was was it a National Geographic or I don't know. I think it was on Netflix. Okay. A feature of a guy in British Columbia, Canada. Shout out to Canada. How's it going, eh? Who is like best friends with a fucking killer whale.
What?
Yeah, it'll come to me the minute we end the broadcast. But there's a documentary out there about this guy who goes out and does this sort of long distance rowing in, as you say it in Canada, Vancouver. And it was a sly maneuver when we moved to Vancouver. Okay. You got to watch the
gotta get the E in there, right?
Well, it's the OU. It's like couch Vancouver.
Okay. Yeah, all right. It's very French. Okay.
Which is sort of very sing-songy.
Okay.
Anyway, this guy's out one day and he's doing his long distance rowing, and this fucking killer whale starts tracking with him.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the whale.
That's what you want to see. Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? I don't know shit about killer. Well, I don't know shit about much, but the one experience I've had like that. You want to hear the story?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was surfing in Santa Cruz, and I was in the water with one of the people I love to surf with the most. Her name is Alyssa Block. Alyssa, if you're watching, I love you, bless you. And Alyssa is a beautiful, beautiful longboarder, and she makes these incredible turns. And I'm right-handed as a surfer, as a person, but she surfs goofy foot.
Okay.
And so what that means is, if we can share a wave, then we're sort of looking at each other, and we love to do all this, stuff, share waves together. Okay. Anyway, one day we were out surfing in Santa Cruz, and she caught a wave before me. And waves, for those of you who don't surf, come in sets. So there's tend to be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, however many in a set. So she catches the wave in front of me, and then I catch the next wave.
Okay.
And when I'm on the wave, my friend Alyssa, because she got off the wave, she starts screaming at me. And I look down, and there's 3 dolphins. And if you've ever been on a boat, dolphins will hang off the very nose of the boat.
Okay.
And they kind of play right off the tip of the boat.
Okay.
And so there's 3 dolphins, and I surf on a very long board, and so it's kind of like a boat, and they are sitting on the edge of my board, and they're playing in the wave like my board was a boat. And Alyssa sees this, and I didn't see it at first. When you're surfing, you're very focused on catching the wave and taking off and getting in the right position. And because she just gotten off a wave and she saw the dolphins in the wave, she's screaming at me. And then I look down, and there they are. And then, the angels sing, and all the good shit happens.
Okay. Yeah. I was expecting you to look down and there was a killer whale or, shark there or something like that. I'm like, man, alive. Well, no. Avoid the beaches of Santa Cruz.
No, although there is a video out there. If you Google San Francisco Ocean Beach shark, there's a video out there a few weeks ago. There were sharks out in the lineup at Ocean Beach in San Francisco.
Really? That's no good.
Yeah, Big Whitey, he's out there.
Big Whitey.
The man in the gray suit coming to get you.
Oh my God. All right. So, well, let's put a bow on this one. I heard from Colin. He definitely cannot join us. Sadly, I was trying to get him to join us because he finally got back to his place, but he claims he's not presentable, so he cannot. You have to give him a hard time. But anyway, so for those of you that are watching live, go to subscribeonitunes.com. That is the easy and quick shortcut to get to the show directly on iTunes. Do two things. Subscribe to the show and then download the episodes that are there. There is episode 0 with you and Colin, where you really go deep into like your own personal backgrounds and all that good stuff, personal category design. And then there's the Dushka episode and Adam Honig, which we haven't talked about Adam at all. You want to give a quick primer on who Adam is?
You know, it's funny because I had not listened to our dialogue with Adam since we shot it.
Good.
And so the way we Colin and I have sort of gotten into a rhythm, Matt, is we think about it as a dialogue. It's not an interview, you know. It's
conversation.
Yeah, we want the experience we want. You know, Tom Schwab. Shout out to Tom Schwab at Interview Valet. You know, he described listening to Legends and Losers as, you know, it's 2 or 3 a.m. and you're at IHOP. You know, which
that's right.
I've been
in Los Gatos, nonetheless.
Yeah, no, I've been in a lot of those kinds of places at 3 a.m. And in the booth behind you or next to you is this conversation going on, and you get sort of pulled into it, and
yes. It digs its way into your ear hole and won't let you go.
Yeah, so you know, we may be drilling our way into your ear hole, but you know, so our hope is that we have great dialogues with people, not necessarily interviews. Anyway, blah blah yada yada. So today I actually listened to. I was doing some work in the yard and hanging out with the dinosaurs. And while I was doing that, Matt, I actually said, "Fuck it, I'll listen to the Adam Honig Legends and Losers." And listen, Adam Honig, you were fucking awesome on that show. If you guys have not listened to the Adam Honig Legends and Losers, I want to beg you to do so. He is. You know, I remember getting off the call, you know, and Colin and I just feeling like, fuck, that guy's incredible. But, you know, I've known Adam for so long. He's an entrepreneur, and he is really he started a company called Spiro. And Spiro is really changing the future of selling by using cloud and mobile technology and machine learning and artificial intelligence in an incredible way. And I must tell everybody, I'm an investor and an advisor. So okay. I am not fucking unbiased, but not unbiased for a reason.
Right.
Adam is a great entrepreneur. I've known him since I was, I don't know, plus or minus 25, and I'll be 49 in May. And wow. Yeah, fuck yeah. And he's just had an incredible career. And what he's doing now, I think, is going to be the ultimate. Anyway, as I listened to the interview, Matt, I couldn't believe how open and honest he is, you know, about the company failures and personal failures and what it's taken to learn and to build Spiro. And he's just so real, and in the parlance of our times, legit. It's a great fucking episode.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think people, as long as it's in the right context of the journey to success, I think people want to hear about the failures. I mean, it makes you more human, and we all go through it anyway, so you might as well share it, which is part of the reason you guys call it Legends and Losers, because I mean and you talk about this in the book, which is that's the path to being legendary. You have to take big chances and you have to risk big failures. And if you're not willing to risk the big failures, you'll never be legendary because you won't ever take big enough chances. And so it all ties together. So yeah, it helps to have guys like that are super successful share their failures, because then it makes the rest of us go, you know, I can take bigger chances, and let's fail big and let's fail publicly, but let's at least do it trying to do the biggest thing we possibly can.
Yeah, and there's two other shows I would really point people to that are about to come out. Now, the first one, my guess is will come out before the other one I want to mention. The first one is our discussion with a legendary woman named Shaku Atre. And Shaku grew up in India, and I don't want to give away the show, but the story of her life is, you can go back to when she was 3 or go back to where she is now. She's in her 70s. And I've known her since I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
And she's a legendary success. But the whole story of her life is, I was the first and or only woman to do X.
Really?
Yeah, she ends up getting an incredible advanced degree and working for IBM in the 1960s and 70s in Germany and in New York. And ultimately, she becomes one of the most powerful and influential women in information technology. She writes books that sell hundreds of thousands of copies. Anyway,
how the hell do you meet these people? What? Man, I didn't get out to California fast enough.
Yeah, well, you gotta watch the Shaku interview, and then another one. They're all my favorites, but we just shot this show that'll come out probably after the Shaku discussion, but with Ann Mirko, who's the co-founder, Mike Maple's co-founder of Floodgate, and this is a woman who's a PhD. And was a PhD in her, I think she got her advanced degree when she was still in her 20s, maybe in her early 30s, but I mean fucking young. Mm-hmm. And yet this was a person who, in the beginning of her academic career, people didn't think she was an advanced person. Okay. And she had a lot of doubt. And this is a woman today who's the mother of 3 and who, many have called the most quote unquote powerful woman in startups.
Really?
Yeah, it's an incredible story. I mean, she's just fucking unbelievable. And she's not even beginning to be done. I mean, she's, I don't know how old Ann is, but I mean, she's very early in her career. And, she's backed some incredible companies like Lyft and TaskRabbit and many others. And anyway, her life story's an incredible inspiration.
Very cool. Yeah, so we've got Bob Evans, Ray Wang, Shaku, and Ann, and then
it's actually Ray Wang. We joke about that.
Okay, maybe that's why I picked that up.
It's written Wang, but it's funny. I'll tell a little bit of podcast inside baseball. I'm learning, and you're teaching me. You're my coach, and when we bring folks on, I'm never quite sure when to hit record.
Yeah.
Right, because I think, well, do we do a formal tee up and then hit record? But sometimes people just get going, and so you're like, well, fuck, and you just
scramble. Yeah,
exactly. And in the case of Ray Wang, we were fucking around, and we were busting each other's balls about a bunch of stuff, and so I hit record, and so the beginning of the dialogue is actually me fucking up his name. Stuff like, oh, you're getting this horribly wrong and stuff. It's terrible. and I have to warn you, if you are an Amazon, Matt, what's the name of that fucking cylinder they sell? Alexa, what's that thing called?
Yeah,
the Echo.
Echo. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just warn you now. If you're an Amazon Echo owner, you might end up with a lot of fucking books coming your way when you listen to that podcast, if it's on speaker.
Oh my God. Hopefully Alexa recognizes your own voice and not you guys.
Yeah. No, if Alexa starts to recognize Ray and Christopher's voice, then you'll be buying all sorts of crazy fucking shit.
Nice. Oh my God. Yeah. So most of those will come out in the next 2 weeks. So you guys have that to look forward to. That's gonna be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thank you for being such a great partner.
Yes, and too bad Colin couldn't make it because I was excited to have him here. He had an issue because somebody that he was skiing with got the keys locked in the car, so he literally could not go anywhere. So anyway, we'll have to give him a hard time about that. But anyway,
that makes Colin Vincent the loser on today's show.
That's right.
But you know what? Maybe it makes us the loser because I bet you he was shredding all kinds of POW in Tahoe, and I don't know what you were doing today, Matt, but that's not what I was doing.
Nope, working like a dog. So thanks, Colin, for that. Appreciate it. Glad you got to have some fun without us. All right, guys. Well, let's wrap this one up, guys. Again, you can go to subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on iTunes.com. That is the iTunes shortcut link to get there. Subscribe to the show. Make sure to download the episodes that are there. And Chris, thanks so much, man. This was awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Matt Johnson, you're a legendary guy. Bless you. We wouldn't be here without you. And everybody listening and tuning in and picking this up as a podcast episode, bless you and be legendary.
That's right.